Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me along on this chat. It's great.
No problem. Thanks for joining. Do you want to just start off by telling us a little bit about what you do and your role in the cybersecurity industry?
Excellent. Yeah, of course. I guess I've got quite a strange role, a unique role. I'm director of a university student competition, encouraging people to come and see the benefits of a career in cybersecurity, but not necessarily focusing on the traditional, sort of solely the traditional deep tech or deep technology focused pen testing type role, but actually broadening out what we mean by cybersecurity and showcasing the vast different types of roles in cyber to encourage people to think about how they could apply their skill sets in these areas when they might not necessarily have thought about it. They've come from other disciplines or backgrounds. So I do
Mhm.
that. That takes up quite a lot of my time. That's the UK Cyber Leaders Challenge. And then on top of that, I've got a couple of roles where I work with different communities, bringing communities together. So I'm an advisor, part of the KPMG's I4, which is the International Information Integrity Institute, and I work with the team there to design and create events that are focused on educating and encouraging CISOs and cybersecurity leaders across multinational organizations to really bring the best learning from across the field to help them in their roles. And then alongside that, I'm a Associate Programme Director down at Wilton Park on the south coast of England, which is part of the Foreign Office, where we hold dialogues and policy between policymakers and subject matter experts. And I focus in developing dialogues on topics such as what does acting responsibly in cyberspace mean? So how do we encourage nation states to act responsibility and how or responsibly, and how do we encourage other or organizations, private sector entities as well, and public sector entities to act as appropriately as possible in cyberspace, and how do we manage those that might not be acting that well as well? And also, finally, I'm also an events host for Rant, so I bring communities together and help vendors have better relationships with their potential target clients and help those CISOs and other cybersecurity leaders really kind of understand the kind of cutting edge of capabilities out there and help them address their problems and challenges. So I guess what I say is I've got many hats, and I guess for me, what's really interesting in all of those hats, and I would say a considerable role in cyber, all of those hats are about bringing people together and bringing different communities together rather than necessarily deep diving in one particular area.
You must be very passionate about it. I thought that list was never going to end, actually. Um,
Sorry, it's a long list. I've got to find my elevator pitch, haven't I? Really, to be honest.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's great. So, how did you get into that? When did you start? When did your interest in cyber security
Um,
start?
So that's a great question, and I guess we're all of an, oh, not all, a lot of us in the industry are of an age where there wasn't such a thing as a cybersecurity profession when we started. So it's great to see now the number of cybersecurity courses at university, the number of cybersecurity training programs, and opportunities for people now to pick up a cyber course and come develop their capabilities, develop their passion in this area. So that's great to see how far progress has come in that space.
Yeah.
For me, it was quite interesting. I worked for the MOD as a strategy analyst, thinking about how we can improve the way we fight wars, how we can better understand our enemy leadership, and shape our engagement strategies around them. And I did a range of different projects and activities. I chased pirates off the coast of Africa, which sounds a lot more exhilarating than it actually was.
Oh,
I was
wow.
actually sat in a windowless office in the Middle East, counting spreadsheets and numbers.
Nice.
Um, I looked at roadside bombs in Afghanistan and how they were evolving in terms of threats. We could build our capabilities to defend against them more effectively. I worked on the Olympics projects and looking at the risks associated with the Olympics. So I did a variety of different projects. And I think in about 2010, 2011, I was given an opportunity to help pull through some of the research the MOD had been doing on understanding how we understand people, how we understand how we influence people, and look at how that now applies in this thing called cyberspace, which was relatively new back then. So I spent a lot of time with operational teams thinking about what we were trying to achieve and understanding the relationship between technology and human. And that was absolutely fascinating. So that was my first introduction to the internet. The fact I get paid for playing on the internet was great as well. And really sort of have a national security mission was fascinating as well. So I did that. And then in about 2015 time, 2014, 2015, I moved into academia where I worked with the British military, helping them think about the implications of cyberspace on how they fight wars, how they conduct military operations, and how they defend themselves in cyberspace. And that was, again, really fascinating to look at that blend of traditional ways of fighting and traditional ways of military operation, but also recognizing this new digital dimension that was coming into play. And then from that, I took on a few additional roles looking at bringing communities together and for me it's really understanding the knotty problems, the complex problems we're facing, and seeing how we can approach them in a more effective way, I guess, and that's always been the heart of what I do. So
Oh my God, it sounds like you've done loads of stuff. Do you have you worked with lots of different teams?
Yeah, and I guess I've been very lucky by default. When I first started in the Ministry of Defence, I worked in multidisciplinary cross discipline teams as default. So for
Mm.
me, it was great, and that was what was exciting. I was working with teams of psychologists. I was working with statisticians. I was working with deep technical focused folk, and it was about bringing the best of each other together to work effectively in a team. And that I guess philosophy has very much stayed with me. I feel like I'm confident I don't know the answer,
Hmm.
but I'm confident that I can bring a group of people together and we can put our minds together and we can come up with a pretty good go at the answer. Even if we might not get it right, we can bring our different strengths together and kind of address any biases we might have, try and look at the solution in a more effective way or an innovative way as well. And that to me is what's really exciting when we're realizing we're at the cutting edge of some of these challenges and we have to think differently than we've done before.
And off the back of that, do you think it's important to have a diverse team? Um, and what kind of strengths to different kind of people bring to the team?
Well, um, I think I don't think it's a benefit. I think it's an essential need now, and I think that's the real challenge. Is that you know we live in a complex age. We're dealing with complex threats. We're dealing with complex situations. Most of the simple stuff has been done. Most of the
Mhm.
stuff that you can do, focusing on one particular stovepipe or one particular discipline, has been addressed, or we've got a good idea of how to do it. I'm not saying some things are easy, but we still know how to do them and we can approach them. But
Mhm.
some of the real challenges we've got are where you really bring a blend of different fields together, or you bring a blend of different challenges together. And actually, trying to take a single disciplinary approach to it means you're not addressing the problem properly or as fully as you need to.
Yeah.
So I think we really have to recognize now that in today's age, multidisciplinary has to be by default.
Mhm.
Multidisciplinary, bringing diverse perspectives together has to be the essential kind of focus. And I guess I can say this without getting too political. We're at a time on the global stage where the DEI programs are becoming under or being challenged by some individuals, and I think that's just fundamentally a shame. But I think it's fundamentally a shame that we're in a space where we have to have these kind of set DI efforts because actually, for me, it's a no-brainer. It should be a wing. We should be looking at bringing diverse perspectives in to start with.
Yeah, definitely. Well said. And what kind of unique strengths do you think women bring to the industry, to the cyber industry? Like on the whole, obviously you can't generalize, but
Um, so it's really difficult to pick out, I guess an association from women that's different from men alone. But I do think that you can see by default a different perspective. You know, it would be silly not to recognize that the perspective a woman brings to the world is very different to a man by default anyway. So just by having that challenge and alternative perspective, that's got to be useful.
yeah.
Um, but I think certainly in our competition and certainly some of the all female teams we've had in our competition, I think by default I've seen a more strategic approach to some of the problems coming from the women only teams, whereas there's perhaps it might be a natural tendency, particularly in the STEM topics, for men to be slightly more focused on the technical solutions or the on that. But again, I feel like I'm already stereotyping. But if I had to pick one thing, that's perhaps that there's perhaps a more opportunity to be strategic from the start with.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually, because I was going to ask you whether you sort of notice any patterns in men and women's different approaches. So that's really interesting. And obviously, like you're saying that women are take a more strategic approach and stuff, and they're obviously interested in getting into cybersecurity, but they're really kind of under indexing in that industry. Can you think of what you think is the biggest kind of barrier for women to get into the industry?
So I think there's a couple of barriers, and I think some of them are frustratingly in place and need to be addressed straight away, and some of them I think will be addressed over time. I think there's some stats, and I can't quote them, so forgive me for not being able to source these stats that highlight that in a standard job interview, if you put a male candidate up against a female candidate, the female candidate will be less likely to promote their capabilities of being able to handle the job and the challenges of the job more so than the guy. So I think there's an inherent um, uh, bias in women don't put themselves forward for those opportunities, might not even put them apply for the job because they don't meet all the criteria. Will men will naturally have or according to the stats, will if they meet 7 out of 10 criteria, they'll give it a punt, whereas women will have to feel like they meet 9 out of 10 in order
Yeah.
to give the job a punt. So I think reducing those things and empowering women to feel comfortable giving it a try is good. But I think fundamentally, I think one of the challenges I really see is that women are underrepresented in this industry, but there should be no reason they are.
Mhm.
But I think the perspective needs to change. So when we talk about in this industry, what are we talking about? What roles are we focusing on? And I think for me, if we're looking at traditional tech roles and we're always sourcing from traditional STEM communities, then we haven't seen the number of women coming through the STEM courses for whatever reason that might be, both in terms of the appropriate encouragement for women to take STEM courses, but also because they might also be in other areas. And
Yeah.
the UK Cyber Leaders Challenge, for example, I think is a great testament. And I would bring this example, it's one of my own examples, but I would bring it, we've got a 50-50 gender split in women and men applying for the competition from university.
Oh, wow.
Now, that's great, but it's almost unheard of in cybersecurity. So why
Yeah.
is that? Well, I think the reason is because we're not looking in the just traditional STEM areas. We're reaching out to other university clubs, committees, societies, other university schools, and we're
Hmm.
saying, hey, this is something that could be of interest to you. It doesn't have to be the traditional STEM focus. And I think that's the unique message. So it's about encouraging people to see the breadth of the industry and the
Yeah.
breadth of the space available rather than just seeing it as a focused, narrow area. But I think by default, because cyber is quite new and novel, we're still working out what those professions are.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's still easy to fall back to getting the simple things right first, which is
Yeah.
bounding the professions in those technical areas. So if I look at what most people think of as cyber, it's a traditional pen testing type role. Well,
Hmm.
by default, that's a very deep technical role, which by default has more STEM students apply for it, which by default has more male students applying on it, for example, because that's how it's been driven. Now we need to change those and we need to challenge that. But if you looked at the cybersecurity industry more broadly, there's a range of different areas, there's a range of different opportunities where actually you need strategic thinking, you
That's
need
right.
policy advice and guidance, and actually the opportunity space there is much greater. So for me, I think, again, if we look at the UK Cybersecurity Council professions and the skills and roles they're developing, you can see where there's a greater spread of opportunity there for all individuals, all characters, no matter their background, no matter their gender, no matter their discipline they study. And
Hmm.
actually, that's about encouraging people to see cybersecurity more broadly as well. And I think that's one of the challenges we've really got to really lift the lid off what we mean by cyber and then empowering people to take the roles that are appropriate to them, no matter their gender, no matter their background.
Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. And as someone who's trying to encourage people to get into the industry, what steps do you think businesses and other leaders could take to create a more inclusive environment that attracts and retains women in cyber?
I Again, I think there's a range of inclusive measures that can be taken no matter the discipline. Recognizing that, parenting responsibilities might be
Yeah.
shaping an individual's career path in one way compared to another. And obviously being a mother, you're taking time out to if you choose to be a parent, recognizing that and allowing them re-entering back into the profession without them feeling disadvantaged and hindered, I think is critical no matter the career on. But the opportunity for career transition, recognizing that people might have that, change of direction that again I use the parenting example, but it's they're in change of direction at a certain stage in their career, they want to flip, they bring their transferable skills from one discipline and bring it into the industry, so making the industry more open to that transfer process and allowing individuals no matter what stage of their life recognize that they can make a contribution. So all of those steps about flexible working, for example, where by default there seems to be a greater requirement and need, understandably,
Hmm.
with parenting responsibilities, to allow people that fair playing ground, and that's what I
Yeah.
think is picking up. And then in the cyber industry, I think you know I've always been impressed in the cyber industry how inclusive and willing to support we are. Last week, I ran 3 events for the Cyber Leaders Challenge, and I had a large number of volunteers from across industry and government giving up their time to come judge the students, give advice to mentor the students. No
Yeah.
questions asked, no challenge. They wanted to do this and they wanted to give their time. And
Nice.
that was great to see. So giving people the opportunity to give back is something we're already doing in the industry, and then allowing these initiatives to develop. And we're beginning to see a breadth of different initiatives aimed at empowering disadvantaged communities, women in cybersecurity, and that's, I think, can only be a positive thing. Giving them the chance to get that equal footing into the industry and learn more about the opportunities there. And a couple of groups I'd draw attention to, the Saida, for example, Stephanie, a team in Saida are doing some fantastic work empowering Black and ethnic minority women to get upskilled in cybersecurity, to transfer across from other disciplines and take up a role in cyber. And then the Cyber Women group, Sophie and Jenny, again, people I know very well, come through a competition, saw that when they were at university, wasn't many opportunities for women and underrepresented groups to learn more about these opportunities. So did something about it,
Yeah.
and fantastically set up a branch network of cyber women groups in different universities just to empower people to learn more, no matter their background, no matter anything, to learn more about opportunities in cyber. So I think we're seeing a real inclusive approach, inclusive mindset being adopted by default in the industry. And I think we should be celebrating that. There's more we can do. Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. The job's not done. But actually, this is a really welcoming community. I am always amazed at the number of people who are willing to support, willing to offer some advice, willing to have a cup of tea and chat with you about career options and do that. And actually, I think we need to pat ourselves on the back sometimes, as well as identify the areas where we need to develop more as well.
Yeah, that's actually really nice to hear. And also it's like kind of a testament to how much women are valued in the industry, and like that's actually recognized, because that's kind of, it feels a little bit few and far between sometimes. It's so nice to hear that it's such a welcoming field.
And I guess I'm very conscious that I'm saying that as a white male in cybersecurity. So my perspective could be very different to others. And
Yes.
I fully acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding that, I have definitely been impressed and engaged with and supportive of and amazed at the progress that some of these initiatives have taken on. The Women in Cybersecurity Group established a great body of work that they do in the UK and Ireland. And, we're seeing celebrated awards of people, and it doesn't seem to be as male dominated. Now, I say that as a male, so I could be wrong, but I certainly feel empowered by the number of leading cybersecurity professionals who are women, for example, doing
Yeah.
impressive roles. The CISO of the MOD was a lady, Christine, in previous roles. The new CISO of the MOD is another lady. Now, again, I'm picking that as just one example, but we can look at CISOs on critical national infrastructure providers. Again, I think we're seeing evidence of people there who are now becoming role models for others to follow. And
Yeah.
that's the important thing, making sure there's individuals people can look up to and say, I recognize myself in them and I can follow
Yeah.
that path. So there are definitely steps still to be done, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but I just think, we're a nascent community. It's come
Yeah.
from a very deep technical space, a traditional STEM space where there has been general underrepresentation of women, but I think there are steps being done, and I think we have to at least recognize the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's still more to do, but I don't think we're as I don't think it's as negative as it was a few years ago. So we've
Yeah.
made those improvements. Let's keep on going. Let's keep on doing
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, no, it sounds like everybody's kind of backing the same sort of sentiment, which is amazing, and like everybody's sort of working towards the same thing. And obviously, we just hope that eventually people will feel more empowered to go into those roles and not and kind of like see the industry for what it is, and not think like, oh, it's traditionally very male dominated, I can't do that kind of thing. So I think it's about like
Certainly from the students I saw last week,
Mm.
um, the enthusiasm, the energy, the passion, I couldn't see anything holding them back, even if we wanted to,
Oh,
which is great,
that's great. Yeah.
And they were competing. We had 260 students compete last week. Okay, that's not
Yeah.
everyone, but all of them were exploring what career options were that. I didn't get the impression that they were feeling held back in the competition and
That's good.
held back into learning about opportunities to engage. So there is definitely more we can do. I'm not saying that. I recognise I'm a white male, been very privileged in that sense. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, so I'm still looking for mentors, for people to pursue the direction that's right for me. And I
Yeah.
think it's recognising that we need to be as supportive as we can, and we
Yeah.
are making additional steps. And there's communities out there doing more. There's of course more we can be doing, but I think we just could keep on pushing forward.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, for any young women considering a career in cybersecurity, have you got like any kind of top tips or like one piece of advice that you'd give them?
um, I'm trying to think if I'd give the advice differently to young men, and I think that's interesting because I think my advice is the same, and I
Yeah,
think
okay.
that's really important as well.
Mhm.
So my advice is get out and do, get out and
Mhm.
sign up and get up and say yes. Find out what you don't like as much as you do like, and get out and network. Go and connect with people, learn what they're doing, find out if that interests you, find out if it doesn't. If you can have a plan, great. And then you come up against an opportunity and compare that with the plan and say, yes, I'm going to take that opportunity, or no, I'm going to stick with my plan. But
Mhm.
don't worry if you don't have a plan. Just get out and do stuff, volunteer, get stuck in, gain that experience, gain that network, gain that broader understanding. And before you know it, you'll be carried along and you'll be making decisions. Should I do this and that? And then you'll be further down a career than you realize. And I think it will happen organically at that point. And I think that advice is universal. And particularly, I was reflecting on some of the advice given at the competition last week. That was coming across the board from people. Say yes, get stuck in, find out what you're passionate about, and find a way to make it happen. if you're going to be passionate in cybersecurity, I remember listening to a talk by Lee Stevens from BT Group, and he talks about, putting it in your CV. I'm really passionate in cybersecurity. I love cybersecurity. Full stop. Well, how are you gonna sell that to someone who's interviewing
Yeah.
you? How are you going to sell that to someone who's being? You're going to sell that by saying, "I'm really passionate in this part of cybersecurity, and I've done this. I've helped organize this event. I've been
Yeah.
involved in this society. I've been involved in this community, and I really learned this, and I really like doing that." Or separate to this, I've gone off and studied in this area, and I've focused in this aspect, and that's what I want to do more of. And like, you can then show evidence and data to why you're passionate about cybersecurity. But it's
Yeah.
also really useful to find out what you're not passionate about as well, so you don't go down
Mm.
that route as well. So the more you can get stuck in, the more you can explore, the more you can find out, the better informed decisions you're going to make. And I do think that's universal. I can't think of anything that I would say specifically to women over the men. I guess the other thing is always address that imposter in you. You will feel like an imposter, and if the stats are that women aren't necessarily applying for jobs because they don't see themselves meeting all the criteria, then that's what we've got to overcome. So
Yeah.
I feel like an imposter in cybersecurity because I'm not a deep technical specialist, and I
Mm.
know loads of other people who feel like an imposter. Some of them because they're deep technical specialists and they want to work in other areas. So realize the limiting self beliefs and
Yeah.
work at those. And that is a real challenge. I struggle with that. I don't think that's a gender specific challenge, but we really need to work out how we can empower people to have more faith in themselves and address the opportunities that are in front of them, and that the opportunities that they can take that will stretch them. And that's
Yeah.
what we need people to be doing.
Yeah. That's great advice. Thanks, Rob.
No worries at all. Hopefully it works.